This happened last fall. When I was sent to a quiet town in northern Pennsylvania for work, I repair commercial refrigeration systems, and at the time I was traveling alone between small towns because our company was short-staffed. The place I was assigned felt forgotten, like it had slowly faded out over the years. Most of the buildings were either closed or empty, and the streets went silent not long after sunset. I was scheduled to stay 3 nights while fixing walk-in freezers at an old, family-owned grocery store. It was the only job in that area, so my company booked me into a roadside motel just outside town. It was the only place with an available room. I arrived a little after 7 in the evening. The motel had a single row of rooms facing the parking lot. There were maybe a dozen units, but only a few cars parked outside. The whole place looked worn down but still in use. Inside the office, it smelled like old coffee and cleaning chemicals. The woman at the desk was older, probably in her 60s. She greeted me politely but seemed distracted. While she checked me in, she kept glancing past me toward the parking lot like she was watching for something. When she handed me the key, she gave me a strange warning. She said if anyone knocked on my door at night, I should not open it unless it was her or the owner. She also told me that if I heard anything unusual outside, I should call the office and not go out to check. She said it in a calm voice like it was normal advice, but it stayed in my mind for a moment. I asked if there was something wrong with the area, and she simply said that sometimes people passed through and asked guests for money. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was tired from driving and just wanted to rest. My room was near the far end of the building. Second to last, the inside looked clean enough but old. The furniture had marks on it and the carpet showed signs of years of use. I dropped my bag, then went out to get food from a nearby gas station and returned around 8. As I walked back to my room, I noticed a dark, green pickup truck parked a few spaces away from mine. The engine was running, but the lights were off. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat. What felt unusual was that the person didn't move at all as I passed. No glance, no shift, just sitting still with both hands on the wheel. I assumed they were waiting for someone and went inside. I spent some time eating and watching videos on my phone, trying to relax. Around 10:30, I took a shower and got into bed. The day had been long and I expected to fall asleep quickly. Not long after I lay down, I heard footsteps outside. At first, it didn't bother me since there were other guests, but the steps slowed down and then stopped right outside my door. I waited for the sound of a key or a knock on a nearby room, but nothing happened. After several seconds, the footsteps continued and moved away. Then about a minute later, they returned, again stopping right outside. This time I sat up and listened carefully. After a pause, the footsteps moved away again. I got up and looked through the peephole but saw nothing. The walkway outside was empty. I told myself it was probably someone who had the wrong room. A little after 11, there was a knock on my door. It was soft and controlled. I stayed still. Then it came again, exactly the same. I slowly got up and checked through the peephole. There was no one there. The parking lot lights were dim, but I could see clearly enough that no one was standing outside. I felt uneasy and locked the door again just to be sure. As I turned away, I noticed the curtain near the window had shifted slightly. It wasn't open enough to see outside, but enough to suggest someone might be able to see in. I adjusted it fully closed and turned off the light. I stayed awake listening. Around midnight, I heard a faint scraping sound near the door, like something lightly touching metal. I moved quietly and looked through the peephole again. This time I saw movement. Someone was crouched low, just below the center of my view. I could only see the top of a dark cap and part of a shoulder. They were very close to the door. After a few seconds, the person stood up and moved away quickly. I heard footsteps heading toward the far end of the building. I called the office right away. The woman answered and at first sounded calm, but when I explained what happened, her tone changed. She asked if I had opened the door and I told her I had not. She told me to stay inside while the owner checked the area. A few minutes later, headlights passed across my window and then the office called back saying no one was outside. They told me it was probably nothing serious. I didn't sleep well after that. Every sound woke me up. Sometime before morning, I finally fell asleep. Around 5:15, I woke up suddenly to the sound of my truck alarm. I went to the window and looked carefully. There was a man standing by my truck with the driver's door partly open. He was tall and wearing a dark jacket and a hat. After a moment, he turned his head toward my room. Then he closed the door and walked away quickly toward the road. I called the police. They arrived shortly after and checked the area. Nothing had been taken from my truck. One officer suggested maybe I had forgotten to lock it, but I knew I had. Another officer seemed more concerned when I described everything that had happened during the night. Before leaving, he told me that if anything else happened, I should not open my door under any circumstances. I spent the day working at the grocery store and tried to put it out of my mind. During the day, everything felt normal. But when I returned that evening, it was already dark. I parked under the brightest light and brought everything inside in one trip. The woman at the desk asked if I was okay and offered to move me to a room closer to the office. I asked why she hadn't suggested that earlier. She paused before answering, and then said she didn't think it would be necessary. Then she added that it usually doesn't happen 2 nights in a row. That made me uneasy again. I considered leaving, but I was exhausted and decided to stay one more night. Around 8, I brought food back to my room. Not long after, I heard a vehicle slowly driving through the lot. I looked through the curtain and saw the same dark green pickup. It drove past my room, turned around, and parked at the far end with the lights off. I called the office and told them. This time the owner answered and didn't seem concerned. He said there wasn't much he could do unless something actually happened. I stayed inside and kept checking the window. The truck didn't move. Eventually, I turned off the lights and tried to rest. Sometime after 11, I heard slow footsteps outside again. Then a soft tap on the window. I stayed still. Another tap followed. Then a faint dragging sound across the glass. I felt certain someone was standing just outside. I quietly reached for my phone. Then I heard something else. The door to the room next to mine opened. That room had been empty earlier. I listened closely. There was movement inside, but very careful and quiet. I got out of bed and moved closer to the shared wall. Then there was a sudden knock against it. Once, then again slightly lower. I called the police and spoke as quietly as I could. While I was on the phone, I heard the bathroom window start to move. I rushed over and pushed it closed. Something on the other side pressed back briefly. I locked it and stepped away. Then I heard movement outside my main door as well. There were multiple footsteps this time. Then came soft knocks again. I moved a chair under the door handle and stayed as still as possible. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. After what felt like a long time, I finally saw headlights. Immediately, I heard running footsteps outside, more than one person leaving quickly. The police checked the area and found that the screen from my window had been removed. They also found marks on my truck door and the door of the empty room next to mine. Before I left, one officer spoke to me privately. He said there had been similar situations involving travelers staying alone, people being watched during the night. When I went back inside to gather my things, I checked under the bed. There was a small piece of paper folded near the wall. When I picked it up, I saw my room number and my truck plate written on it. That meant someone had been paying attention long before that night. I packed everything immediately. The officer stayed nearby while I left. I drove out of that town before 1 in the morning. I never went back, and I still think about how close everything felt to becoming something much worse. It all started in October 2025. I had been feeling lonely for a while and decided to download Tinder. At first it was just something to pass time. Swipe left, swipe right, nothing serious. Then one day I got a match. His name was Killian. He looked normal. Military guy, clean profile, nothing suspicious. I sent a simple message. "Hey, what's up?" He replied instantly. And from that moment we started talking every single day. Morning texts, late night conversations. It felt intense, but in a way that didn't seem dangerous at first. He told me he was stationed at a base not too far from where I lived. That made everything feel more real. But after a couple of weeks, things started to change. His messages became more controlling. He would say things like, "You're mine. I don't like you talking to other people." At first, I laughed it off. I thought he was joking. But then the tone got darker. "If I can't have you, no one can. If you block me, I'll find you." Those words didn't feel like a joke anymore. The scary part was, we weren't even in a relationship. I started replying less, trying not to upset him, but also trying to create distance. Then suddenly in December, he disappeared. He removed me from Snapchat without saying anything. I felt relief. Like a weight had been lifted. I thought it was over. I moved on with my life. Weeks passed. Everything felt normal again. Until one day, I got a notification. He added me back. My heart dropped instantly. All those messages, all those threats, came rushing back into my mind. I didn't want to accept, but I was afraid of what might happen if I didn't. So I added him back. Within seconds, he sent a message. "I've been thinking about your smile for 8 weeks." That message didn't feel sweet. It felt wrong. I replied carefully. "That's nice. I didn't mean it. I just didn't want to make him angry." We started talking again, but this time it was worse. He acted like I belonged to him. He kept asking, "Where are you? Who are you with?" He wanted me to turn on my location, saying it was for my safety. But nothing about him felt safe. I refused. That seemed to irritate him. But he didn't stop. Then came Thursday night. I was out with a friend. We were just driving around and talking. Around 1 a.m., I asked him to drop me off at my house. Everything felt normal. The streets were quiet. The air felt still. I walked into the alley next to my house, and then I saw someone standing there. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just a figure in the dark. Then he said my name. My body froze. I slowly responded. "Yes, who is it?" He stepped forward, and I saw his face. It was Killian. My heart started racing. I had never told him where I lived. Not once. Before I could react, he grabbed my throat, tight, and slammed my head against the wall. Everything went blurry. He stared directly into my face, as if trying to read something from me. He kept asking questions. Who were you with? Why are you out this late? I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. Tears started rolling down my face. I felt panic take over my entire body. I thought this was the end. He squeezed harder. My vision started fading. My chest felt like it was collapsing. Then suddenly, he threw me to the ground. The impact was painful. I tried to move, but I couldn't. He climbed on top of me and hit me across the face. The sound echoed in my ears. Before I could recover, his hands were around my throat again, even tighter this time. I looked up at the sky. It was completely dark, and in that moment, I stopped fighting. I thought about everything, and strangely, I thought about my dog who had passed away. I even felt myself smile, because I believed I wasn't going to survive. Then suddenly, he let go, stood up quickly, and said he had to leave. Something about a bus. And then he ran, just like that. He disappeared into the night, leaving me lying on the cold ground, struggling to breathe. My body felt numb. I tried to call my best friend, but no words came out. My voice was gone. All I could make were broken sounds. He understood something was wrong, and said he was coming. When I got to his house, I collapsed on the couch and fell asleep almost instantly. My body was completely exhausted. While I was asleep, he called the police. The next day, I went to give my statement. After hearing everything, they told me something I will never forget. They said my life was in danger. They gave me a personal alarm device, a tracking device, something that could alert them instantly, because they believed he would come back, and they were right. A few days later, I noticed someone following me. It wasn't him, but it was someone connected to him. I could feel it. The way they watched me, the way they stayed just far enough. If my friend hadn't picked me up at that moment, I don't think I would be here right now. Now every time I step outside, I feel like I'm being watched. Every shadow feels wrong. Every quiet street feels dangerous. Because he once told me he would always be watching. And the scariest part is, he found me once, without me ever telling him where I lived. So now I live with one thought. What if next time, I don't see him coming? What if next time, he is already waiting in the dark, and I'm not fast enough to react? That fear never leaves, not even for a second. My name is Mike, and this happened last October. I decided to take a solo trip to the Smoky Mountains. Work had been exhausting for months, and I needed a break from everything. I had gone camping alone before, so this didn't feel like a big deal at the time. I left early in the morning. The drive was long and quiet. Highways slowly turned into empty back roads, and by the time I got close to the mountains, the sky was already starting to fade. A couple hours before reaching the area, I stopped at a small roadside diner. It looked old and almost forgotten. Inside it was quiet. A few older people sat drinking coffee. The waitress greeted me like she had done the same routine for years. I sat at the counter and ordered food. While I was eating, I noticed a man sitting a few seats away. He wasn't doing anything obvious, but something about him felt off. He kept looking at me, not directly, but enough that I noticed. After a few minutes, he spoke. He asked where I was headed. I told him I was going camping in the mountains. He nodded slowly, then said I should be careful out there. I asked why. He just shrugged and said it gets real quiet at night. Something about the way he said it didn't sit right with me, but I ignored it, paid my bill, and left. By the time I reached the trailhead, it was late afternoon. There was a small dirt area to park, no other cars. That should have been a warning, but I liked the idea of being alone. I grabbed my gear and started hiking. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. No voices, no distant sounds, just wind and trees. It took longer than I expected, and I realized I would be setting up camp close to dark. Eventually, I found a small clearing It was flat enough for a tent, and surrounded by trees. I started setting up quickly. By the time I finished, the light was fading. The woods turned gray, and shadows stretched between the trees. I built a small fire. At first, it felt peaceful. I sat there, listening to the forest, the crackling fire, the soft wind. Then I heard something different. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Human. I looked up and saw a man standing between the trees, about 30 feet away. He was just standing there, facing me. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew he was watching. I called out, asking if he was okay. He stepped closer and said hello. Nothing more. I asked if he was camping nearby. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked if I was alone. That question made everything feel wrong. Everything. Then I lied. I told him my friends were coming, that I wasn't alone. He stared at me, then slowly nodded. He turned and walked back into the trees. I watched him go. Before he disappeared, he stopped and turned back toward me. He stood there again, watching. I pretended not to notice. Looking down, trying to stay calm. After a while, he was gone, or at least I thought he was. I stayed by the fire longer than I planned, trying to listen, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Eventually, I put the fire out and got into my tent. I told myself I was overthinking, that he was just another camper, but I couldn't relax. About an hour later, I heard footsteps again, closer this time. They moved slowly around my campsite, circling, leaves crunching under weight. Then they stopped. Right outside my tent, everything went silent. I held my breath. Then I heard it. A slow exhale, right outside. So close, it felt like it was inches away. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. Every instinct told me to stay still. After some time, the footsteps moved away. I waited. Then they came back, again and again, circling, stopping, waiting. Hours passed like that. Sometimes the steps would fade, then return, and at some point, I realized something worse. It didn't sound like just one person anymore. The movement felt different, like there were multiple directions, multiple sets of steps. I couldn't be sure, but I felt it. I stayed completely still, pretending to sleep, waiting for daylight. When the sky finally started to lighten, I didn't hesitate. I started packing immediately. My hands were shaking. I rushed everything. As soon as I stepped out of the tent, I heard it. Multiple footsteps, running. First, through the trees. More than one. I stood there frozen, listening. They were leaving, but they had been close, very close. I didn't finish packing. I grabbed what I could and left, moving quickly down the trail. I didn't look back. I kept expecting to hear someone behind me, but I didn't. When I reached my car, I locked the doors and just sat there, trying to process everything. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was late morning. Sunlight filled the area. Everything felt normal again, and that made me question what happened. I told myself maybe it was nothing, maybe just other campers. I even thought about my gear. I had left things behind. So I decided to go back. It was daylight, and I thought it would be safe. I walked back to the clearing. The same place, the same trees, the same rocks. But when I got there, I stopped. Everything was gone. My tent, my sleeping bag, my supplies, all of it. Gone. There was nothing left. No trash. No signs of damage. Just empty ground. And the ashes of my fire. Like I had never been there. I stood there for a moment, trying to understand, but I couldn't. I didn't search. I didn't stay. I turned around and walked back. I left that place and never returned. I never reported it. I never tried to get my things back. None of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was that I made it out. But even now, I still think about that night. About how many people were really out there and how close they were. While I lay there, completely still, pretending to be asleep and hoping they would leave me alone.